So, in addition to the Californication By The Way records, you also had a hand in the Chili Peppers album One Hot Minute, but from what I understand, there was some controversy during the making of that record. What exactly is the story there?
The first day was kind of a disaster, and nothing sounded good, and speakers didn't sound good, and the console didn't sound good, and nothing sounded good. Second day, we tried some other stuff, and I rented equipment from Los Angeles, and one thing led to another, and it was just sounding terrible. And everybody's looking at me like, "Come on, engineer, what? This is what's going on here." So, to make a long story short, after 3 days, it sounded terrible, and I knew it sounded terrible, and I knew that it probably wasn't my problem, and it wasn't their problem. There was just some phenomenon in that studio at that time where something wasn't right. And they were all frustrated and looking at me, and Rick hadn't come to the session yet. And I finally just said, "Well, look, I think I got to go. I think I've got to make this easy on everybody. Just, stay here, find another guy. I've done my best. I got to go." And so that's basically what happened. I kind of let myself off of the One Hot Minute record, except that they all decided, like, well, maybe he's right. And they all followed me down to Los Angeles. We went into Sound City the next day and set up the session in like 3 hours, and it sounded amazing. And then back in those days, part of my job with Rick was to set up sessions and then hand it off to another guy and then go on and do another record. And so I got it all set up and handed it off to Brendan O'Brien, I think, at the time, and they made One Hot Minute down at Sound City. So that was 1994. And then I really didn't run into him again or see him again until Californication in 1999.
Well, that's a really interesting story. I mean, was that always, like, let's say the original studio for One Hot Minute sounded great. Was it always the intention for you to set it up and then head out, or is that something that kind of just developed?
Well, Rick Rubin is a super talented guy and super prolific and very busy, producing 2 or 3 records at a time all the time, and running a record company, and generally being a really cool guy. So it wasn't uncommon for me to be working on 2 or 3 records at a time with him. Sometimes I would just, get a record started and then hand it off to somebody else to do. They got ready to do One Hot Minute in 1994 with Dave in the band. Mm-hmm. And I got asked to engineer it. And of course, man, the Chili Peppers, they'd had Under the Bridge, they'd had a bunch of big hits, they were really happening. So getting asked to do a Chili Peppers record was fantastic. And I'd been working with Rick Rubin for many years before then, and Rick always produced their records, so I was kind of Rick's guy at the time.
When you were on One Hot Minute, did you ever actually get to see them recording anything?
No. Well, I think we actually did, but everybody was like bummed out. It just wasn't sounding good. I mean, we did try to all play together. It was a beautiful studio, and 1 million hit records were made there. I don't know what the problem was. I tried everything in my power to get it to work, but nobody liked the sound. It wasn't just me. And I don't know. It's just like the planets weren't aligned or something. But,
I hear
you. Dave had a little bit more of a process then. When I worked on him on the Lowen and Navarro records, he just came in and we gave him a guitar and he played the song and that was it. He's pretty quiet. But by the time we did One Hot Minute, or they were doing One Hot Minute, he was Dave Navarro. He was like the man. So he had a process. He had a bunch of amps and he had a whole rig, and it was complicated.
I hear you.
But he's sweet. He's a super sweet guy. It's just like his process was the process. You weren't ready till he was ready. But it wasn't a great environment. But we did play together a little bit. I don't know if any of those recordings exist anywhere.
Really? That's interesting.